Hey everybody, it's the Trout, and I hope you're having a great day and welcome to the Trout Show. You know, I've come across a lot of great musicians while I do this YouTube and podcast channels, but sometimes there's always the ones that kind of reach to the top of their game. In today's episode, I interviewed the guy that put together a community of over 80 musicians to record some of the best covers I've ever heard. They're out of Lexington, Kentucky, and they're called the Lex Band. And you know, I'm not the only one who agrees with that. Some of their videos on YouTube have had over 20 million views. That's a lot of views. But it's a community of musicians. They don't really perform live. They come together to make these videos. And the brainchild is Michael Vandemark. A guy that's been trained as a musician his whole life decided 10 years ago to put this band together. Well, it's not really a band, it's a community. I came across them one day and I thought, wow, what a great group of musicians. They do everything from Lionel Richie to Molly Hatchet to ZZ Top to Led Zeppelin to even Johnny Cash when they do covers. But they get as close as they can when it comes to replicating the original recording. And I think if you listen to the music, you'll understand why people continue to watch and wait for their music to come online. They do only a few tours a year. They do them right there in Lexington. They do some gigs. And people from all over the United States come to see this band. That's incredible when you think about it. So sit back and enjoy this episode with the Lex Band. I think you're going to enjoy it because if you like cover music, no matter what kind you like hearing, you're going to find it from them. But up next, of course, if you like this channel, give me a thumbs up. And if you like, please subscribe. It's much appreciated. So up next, the Lexington Lab Band. I think the best cover band in America. That's next on The Trout Show. Start with a little history with you. When
Yeah,
did you? I noticed that you actually are a drummer. Started
yeah,
out as a drummer,
yeah, I did.
and when did you say? Excuse me. When did you say I want to play drums? How old were you? Were you just a kid?
Oh, I'm the youngest of four boys. My parents were both music teachers, so
Ah,
didn't really have a chance. My oldest brother played drums and percussion. He was 14 years older than me, so when he went to college, he was 18, I was four, and he left his kit at home, and it became mine. So about 4 or 5 years old was when and I just loved the drums. I probably played every day. And did that all the way through high school and college. Got a degree in music ed and percussion, but I studied piano. My parents made me take like I think 12 years of piano, but in high school I started to play guitar and bass because all my friends were in drumline and different things. And so if I wanted to be in a band, I'd always have a great drummer as a friend. So I sang a lot. My parents were vocal teachers, and so my whole family we sang together in church and different things. And so I was always a singer as well. So drummer and
yeah.
singer probably would have been my early years up into college. But I learned to play a little guitar and bass in my high school and college years. And then coming out of college, I kind of shifted to playing a lot more bass, especially professionally with gigs and that sort of thing in the Lexington area. So,
So when you were growing up, who was your drummer or drummers that you admired?
well, um, my early years, I was really into like metal, especially the late '80s. I loved like hair metal, and then of course it went to
Okay.
grunge when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so I was really influenced by bands like, especially, I loved Matt Cameron with Pearl Jam and
Okay.
um, Soundgarden and all that.
Yep.
In high school, Dave Grohl, of course.
Oh
But
yeah.
then when I went to college, I discovered Steely Dan and
Hmm.
Earth, Wind and Fire, and kind of my musical taste shifted. And from early college on, it was Jeff Porcaro. I mean, I think he's probably the
Oh
greatest
yeah.
drummer that ever lived. I mean, he just has it all: professionalism, groove, feel, chops, the whole deal. And I know that's a cliche answer, but it's just the
No, no,
truth.
no, it's not because
When I realized that everything I was listening to, he played on, I thought, well, I better check this guy out. So when I got educated, Porcaro definitely was the one that I've kind of hung my hat on and kind of just listened to my whole life, you know,
well, he's
and
got one of the most famous crews out there with
absolutely. And with
Rosanna.
Rosanna, yeah,
Rosanna.
yeah,
Everybody, if you're a
yeah,
drummer, you got to learn how to play Rosanna to
that's
say he
right.
really
That's
did.
right.
Well, and you're talking about Steely Dan. Steve Gadd, who's still playing, plays still.
Hmm.
Eric Clapton still some.
Yeah, absolutely.
50 Ways to Leave Your
Yeah,
Lover. I mean, all these people, but and I'm never surprised at what people like.
yeah.
I'm older than you, so I grew up
Oh yeah,
in the
yeah,
Beatles kind of thing and
yeah,
Hendrix stuff like that. Mitch
yeah.
Mitchell was my favorite drummer before,
Absolutely.
and then of course
Yeah.
Keith Moon, Mr. Wildman back there on the drums.
My brothers were quite a bit older than me, and they were really into the Police and U2. And so Stuart Copeland
Stuart
probably
Copeland,
was the
great
most
drummer.
influential drummer on my ear. Like, I would, I heard Police records from,
Oh
from
yeah.
when I can remember. So I love the Police is probably my favorite band of like my whole, like they lasted the whole time. But I kind of had the dark years where it was, Def Leppard and, and all that when I was in middle school and high school.
The dark
It's a
years.
guilty pleasure, I mean, I still love it, but those guys weren't really virtuosos by any means, especially on drums and stuff.
No,
So
but you talking about, the Police. Stuart Copeland never played a normal groove.
no, no,
He was,
he was
and
energy and
that's because
attitude.
Sting still is a jazz guy,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, so they're completely different. Now, with me, my
yes,
big thing is I always tell people, young people, that I got to see Jimi Hendrix. They're like, "Oh my God, what was it like?"
yeah,
I said,
that's
"What do you think it
wild.
was? What do you think it was like?" You
Yeah,
know? They're like, "You actually saw him?" I said, "Yes, I got to see him
that's
play."
awesome. That's so
Then I
cool.
tell them the best seats in the house were $6.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Hey, it's a funny story, and I know you, you got more
No, go
important
ahead. No,
questions.
go ahead. Go
But
ahead.
I remember going to see U2 in '92 in high
Oh
school,
yeah.
and
That which album was that? That
that
was
was
after.
UTV. It was the big tour where they took all
Oh,
those semis and lasers
okay.
and trucks, and they had kind of gone. It was after Rattle and Hum, and it was
That's
huge.
okay. I was going to say which album
It
it
was at
was.
the
Yeah.
Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, and of course there was no Ticketmasters. No, you couldn't pick your seats.
No,
You went
no.
to the local. You went to the local department
Yeah.
store to the service desk, and at the time we had to get a lottery, so they gave us a wristband with a number on it. So we
Oh,
came back
wow.
a week later, and you get in line based on the number, and I had to pay $32. And I thought, this is awful. Like I never paid more than like 10 for, to see Van Halen or to see anybody. It's $32. And I thought,
You're
this
like,
is
oh
highway
my
robbery. And of course, we didn't really know where our seats were. We got to the Silverdome, and they just kept walking us down and walking us down. And we were in the 16th row, right in front of the
Oh,
edge,
wow.
for $32. And then, 15 years later, they do this big, they come back out with a new album, and everybody here in Kentucky wants to go see them, and it's $150. I'm like, there's no way I'm paying $150. I saw them for 32.
You did all this stuff. You listen to heavy metal, but you work at a church.
Yes.
When did the idea come along
Yeah.
for the lab band?
Okay.
I mean, you're
So,
going along, you got a good life, you got a
yeah.
great job, your
Yes.
family's doing well, and you said, I don't have enough problems in my life. I need to do something
Yeah.
different.
So, what you have to know about me is, of course, I grew up in the church. My dad, my dad was a high extroverted guy. He was public school administrator in our little town, so everybody knew him. but he was also like the volunteer music director at our church. So I was always involved in music at church. Again,
Right.
grew up on the hymns. It was a Baptist church in Michigan. A lot of hymns. I have I'm deeply rooted in that as far as musically. But my parents they just loved music, and so we had great music. A lot of it was Christian, but my mom loved Andre Crouch and like
Oh
some
yeah.
gospel and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so it wasn't just very traditional music being played in my home. Of course, I had my older brothers. They were all musicians in different ways and in bands, and so I was always in a band with my friends in high school, and my parents were pretty supportive of it, even though, we might be rehearsing Guns N' Roses in the basement or different things. My dad would always try and be like a coach, and I think he was just keeping an eye on us more than
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
but he'd be like, hey, that's a little out of tune, or you need to tighten that up, or, different
yeah.
things.
Well,
And
that's
so,
kind of cool that he did that, though.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we were always encouraged, even a little bit outside of the church box, to express ourselves.
Right.
Um, so the core of who I am is, while I love to be a musician, I also love to do it with people. Like there's a connection. I like the community and connection aspect,
I
and kind of
understand.
so the music education track that I thought I was going to take, to stand in front of a concert band or a marching band was kind of that's right in my wheelhouse too.
Right.
I just
Right.
happened to start attending this church when I was in college, and I started playing in the worship band and thought, wow. And they saw a need and they saw my gifts and they were like, hey, would you come work here for very little and basically be a glorified intern? And I was like, sure, well, I'd rather do that.
Let me ask you real quick. What were you
Yeah.
playing? What instrument were you playing? Or were you playing multiple at that
Anything
time?
they needed,
Okay.
honestly.
All right. All right.
A lot of drums, a little bit of bass.
Okay.
Wasn't singing a whole lot. Didn't even sing here much when I first started here, because I really was kind of like the band leader, the music, and we had a full orchestra at the time too, so I did a little of that. And so this job really scratched a lot of the itches that I had. I had the classical stuff with the orchestra and the choir, but we also had the rock and roll with the worship band, and Lexington is in the smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt, Lexington, Kentucky. So, like you were saying, a lot of people grow up and play in church. It's even more so here. The best musicians usually are on a stage on Sunday mornings in our town.
Yeah.
No offense to the guys that don't do that, but man, there's just
No, I
great musicians
understand.
here
I
in town.
understand.
And so, in my church, we're pretty conservative, but not in a way like we always encourage our staff to be out in the community, and so I still gigged, I still played in bars. With guys that didn't go to our church. I played in some country bands, learned to love country, which I never listened to. Did some wedding event type bands, things like that. So I was always connected with other musicians here in town. But when I had little kids, I got tired of being out till 2 in the morning. And so that's where the lab band shows up.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So I was if you know a whole lot about the history, and I won't bore you too much, you can ask follow-up questions if you want. But when we first started, there were like 5 of us that were like, we're all in. We'll do every episode, and we'll bring in guests. And Derek Bro was the bass player. He only did a couple years, and then he moved away to California. He's actually moved back, so you're going to start seeing him again. But he and I were just talking. We both had little kids, and our wives were like, "Hey, you can't be out till 2 a.m. and then sleeping on
No,
Saturdays." And
it
and I
just
was
screws up your whole life because the next
yeah, and I
day
was no good for
I
work on
had a
Sunday.
job. I was in sales
Yeah,
and doing gigs, and the next
yeah,
I get up. You're hepped up because you get home. You're all excited. You go
yeah.
to work the next day, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be talking to
Yeah,
customers,
and it
going,
was for he and I and the other guys. It never was about the money. It wasn't about the $100
"No,
you could make on a Friday night. I
right,
mean, we had jobs and it was nice, but and I saw live at Daryl's house. I was actually on a on my anniversary trip with my wife in Hawaii, and our time zones were all messed up, and so
oh
we're up
yeah,
real early in the morning,
yeah,
and I turn on whatever music cable station it was, and here's live at Daryl's house, and I'm like, well. I think it was the episode with CeeLo Green, and I was like,
oh,
"Well, look at
seen it.
this!
I've seen,
Look at these 2 guys, totally different, but
yeah,
they're doing the song. They're pretty close to the originals, but they're putting their own spin on it. I don't know, I don't. How would what would it look like to play music at this level and not have to be out all the time? And so originally I thought, well, man, we'll just get together. And there was a band out of Nashville called the Long Players. I don't even know if they still exist, but they would do whole albums. They do Dark Side of the Moon or they do the White
ah,
Album.
right,
Oh, well, that's a really cool idea. But in Lexington, who's really going to come and listen to that? And So those two ideas, seeing live at Daryl's house, having that like note for note recreation idea, I just brainstormed it with Derek a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I mean, why don't we do it? And he kind of had a video background,
Hmm.
and also had another friend Neil, who's still kind of our video director. We just went to him and said, hey, what would it take to get 4 or 5 people to show up for a couple hours? And he's like, oh yeah, we'll do it. There's, let's just try it and see what happens. And so in April of 2013, we just got together and did 4 Doobie Brothers tunes. And if you watch those videos, you can like you can see camera ops in some of the shots. It's just real raw, but
Well,
they still stand
it's your
up.
first time to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I
still
understand.
stand up though. I mean, they
Yeah.
still have an edge, an energy to it. And we weren't exactly note for note on that. Like we weren't so much. We were like, hey, let's take the studio record and try and make it there. But I added some B3 on What a Fool Believes, and so it wouldn't be so synthesizer, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But
You put your little spin on it. Put your
we
own spin on
did, we
it. Yeah.
did, and we've gone away from that. We went away from that pretty quickly. By the third session, we did the Cars. We were like, hey, let's try and do this, like the record. Uh,
Which car song did you?
we did Magic, and
That's great too.
we did 5 of them. We did Drive, and You Might Think, Let the Good Times
Oh, so you did
Roll.
the better. You did the one. I was in a band at the time. We did just what you needed.
Yeah,
That's
and we
not.
did that too. And we
Yeah.
did that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that the original first 4 years, what it was pick an artist like the Cars, pick 4 or 5 tunes, come in and do those 4 or 5. And man, people just, of course, we put up the Doobie Brothers, and we had like, I don't know, 2,000 views on YouTube, and we thought this is amazing. Like, look
Oh
at
yeah.
all these people who have
Yeah.
now we know have watched this for 10 seconds and got a
Yeah.
view, but we thought this is awesome. So we just like,
Right.
let's do it again. And so we did it again, and we did it again, we did it again, and we added the live show in the second year. I was real skeptical of that. I thought, who's going to come to that? And we're getting ready to have our 9th one. And every one that's been indoors has been a sellout.
Wow.
This will be our 3rd one outdoors. We'll probably have more than 3,000 people this year. It's just I mean, they come from all over the country. We had people drive from California last year.
So you know what? Let me ask you a
Minnesota.
question.
I mean, it's great. It's just kind
Excuse
of
me.
it's just kind of taken off without a whole lot of direction. We just keep showing up every couple months and doing this.
Why do you think? I know I probably know the answer, but why do you think people gravitate to that? What do
Well,
you
the
think
first thing
what is it about it that they like?
about the videos,
No, I mean the whole thing. Well, you just said where
the whole
people are
thing.
going to
Yeah,
come and listen to you.
yeah.
I mean, you
Here,
got a name now, brother. I mean, you guys are really good because I
I
know.
appreciate that. I think why they do it is, I think the first and foremost, there's several things that I think we all agree on inside the project, but the biggest one is nostalgia. Um, they like what we do because we get more and more comments of, this is great. I remember when I first heard this in my car,
Wow.
and it's for
Yeah.
whatever reason, because let's take a Journey song. Let's say we do Separate Ways.
Right.
For whatever reason, because it's not Journey, but we're playing it just like Journey,
Right.
it's like they're hearing it for the first time. It takes them back weirdly. I don't know what it is. There's some sort of connection that goes, hey, you guys are doing this just like Journey did when I was 18.
Hmm.
And there's a nostalgia to it. Um, and uh, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an odd example. So we did a Ted Nugent song just a couple months ago called
I
Strangle
forgot what it was. Which one did you do?
Stranglehold,
Oh
and
yeah.
we did it because Roger, who played lead guitar and sang on it, had actually had to learn it and play it with Derek St. Holmes last year. He's a professional guitar player,
Okay.
and he had played it with Derek St. Holmes, who sang the original, and all that. He's like, hey man, I know this. Let's try it. So we get it done with it, and he's like, hey, if you don't want to release that, it's totally fine because it's an 8-minute song.
Yeah, it
It's
is a long song.
buddy, it we can see all the metrics on YouTube. It is the fastest out of the gate video we've ever released ever. Now, some of that is our channel has grown. I get
Oh
that,
yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
even in the last 3 years, where we're getting 1.5 million views a month on average, it was the fastest out of the gate. I mean, just the biggest release we've ever had, and more comments than we've ever had. And it was a song that we didn't even know if we really thought was going to be good or wanted to release. But what I didn't realize is that song is such classic rock radio and
Oh, it is.
was so
Yeah.
big at the time.
Yes,
It
it
was so
was.
cutting edge and revolutionary at the time. All these people are like, we've never heard anybody cover it that way. We've never, like, it takes me right back to driving my, 78 Camaro down,
Yeah.
the dirt road, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And funny enough, this past weekend, Ted himself started emailing me about it.
That's cool.
And it's like, and he's like, this is a lot of expletives and, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
This blows me
that's
away.
Ted.
You guys captured this. It's,
Yeah, that's
he's
Ted.
talking about it. So there's something about those songs and the classic rock generation
Yeah.
that actually I'm on the back end of, like, I'm
Yes,
not
you
really
are.
part of,
Yeah.
but I grew up hearing it with my brothers and such. But the Boston, Foreigner, Aerosmith, Eagles, Ted Nugent, like that group of
Early
people,
70s and 80s until
they
things
want to
changed.
hear that
Yeah.
done today really
Yeah.
well. And like you said earlier, they go see Toto and Journey, and they're great, but there's like one original member.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it's live and it's fine, but what they get in us, and I promise I'm not we're not as close to the original as everybody thinks. There's just a nostalgia like filter.
Your brain fills in the rest.
Right, your brain
Yeah.
fills in the rest, but
Uh,
what they get is they appreciate that we appreciate what they're looking for. Like, so it's really that. Now the other, maybe right below that, is I think people actually see the community, no ego aspect of what we do. I think it comes through the screen. If you come to the show, it definitely comes through because we'll
oh
have
well.
40 musicians at the show,
Yeah.
and guitar players are cheering each other on, and there's just no competition, and that's very strange and not normal in music circles. You've been a musician.
Long time.
You're a guitar player. I don't know you at all, but guitar players can be a little bit of head case.
Especially us lead guitar players.
Yeah, they want the seat, and in our community, there's just never been any room for that. It's this person's gifts line up with this song or this artist, and let's celebrate that. And so we've used over 82 people, and they just are happy to do it and want to be part of it, and they're happy to cheer each other on. And so I think that translates through the videos more than maybe people even. I don't know if they know what they're seeing, but I think they feel that. I think they feel the lack of ego and the common love for one another and for the music. So
Well, I the first time I found you guys, I don't know if it just showed up in the algorithm or something like that, was, and I can't remember what song I listened to,
yeah,
because and it was before I started even doing this. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and as a musician for 50 years plus, I'm always looking for people that are really good that nobody knows about.
yeah,
And that the one thing about YouTube has allowed me and you and people that we watch, people like yourself that are very talented, get an audience that they never would have.
yeah, yeah,
Because the other thing I tell people all the time, and I had discussions with some big bands and some independent artists, there's a very big camaraderie when you play in a band, and nobody understands it except the band that you're in.
hmm
And if you become part of this journey, so to speak, where you have inside jokes, you have all
yeah,
that nobody else
yeah,
understands but
yeah,
you. And so the one thing I found doing what I do now is when I talk to famous musicians, I don't have a problem talking to them because I understand exactly what they do. And when I talk to somebody that's been playing longer than I have,
yeah,
I know what they're going through. But your band, though, when
yeah,
I first saw it, I knew immediately these are professional people. I mean, they may not be getting paid, but they've been
yeah, yeah,
trained professionally. Okay, and I
yes,
mean
yeah,
I mean that with all sincerity, because that was the thing about it which caught my eye. Because I was playing a song before I came in here. My wife said, "Well, who are you interviewing?" And I said, because usually I have them on days she's not around. I said,
yeah,
and so I forgot what song I picked out. And she goes, "What sounds just like the record?" I go, "Yeah." But I think the thing it's what you just said was very interesting to me. I don't know what it is in your area, but in Dallas area, it's all about tribute bands. That's all it is anymore. That's
hmm
all they want, and they want you want a Stevie Ray tribute band, you want a Journey tribute band, yeah, yeah, yeah. And some of them are very good,
yeah,
but they're playing live. And the difference between you guys is exactly what you just got through saying, and that is it's not live, but it is. But you're actually playing really close to the original recording,
Yeah.
which people want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that this,
I think the tribute thing is the phenomenon is because the generation that like our average age of a fan is a 55 to 60-year-old
I was
guy.
going to say probably is.
But and that's a rock and roll generation. I mean, my parents didn't grow up with popular music that way. And so, you know, that that they want to continue to listen to what they loved and it's not on the radio. I mean,
No,
that there's no real bands left. I mean, you might
yeah,
have the Foo Fighters still exist, but
yeah.
there's not a lot of bands really left that are going to get major attention. And so there's a real hole or a gap because if you do go see Foreigner, you're seeing a tribute band.
Yeah.
Like a lot of nights, there's not an original member on the stage, and so there is that hole, and we didn't intend to jump into that gap on YouTube and help fill it. We just wanted to make good music that we loved, do it at a high level. And for me, I just kind of have the academic mind. So I'm like, I want to dig into these albums and kind of learn the parts. And I don't want a guitar player just to come in and play what he thinks the part's been for the last
You want him
15.
to play the part.
I want him to actually play the part
Yeah.
because and people will say, why don't you do your own thing with it? Why don't you put your own spin on it? Blah, 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 blah. Well, again, go to the symphony there in Dallas and they play, Beethoven's Fifth. What are they going to do? They're going to play it note
Play.
for note,
They got the
and they're
score
going
out
to,
there.
but they're going to have an interpretation, and they're going to be able to be judged based on their performance of that.
Right.
Why does it need to be any different? Now, I'm not saying it's bad to put your own spin on something, but I don't see that as a negative. I see that as a, hey, Joe Perry wrote this amazing guitar riff. I'm going to try and master it and recreate it and perform it because that takes skill, and then I'm going to put it with the bass and the drums, and we're going to make it this rock and roll symphony performance, And so I think people, I mean, they do. I don't even think it. They do. They say that they really enjoy that we do that. And there's a handful that'll say, "Why don't you do your own thing?" or "Why don't you put your spin on it?" I go, "Hey, we're all in different like we've used 82 people. There's people
Yeah,
who
it's
write their
amazing
own
to me.
music. There's people who write their own music. There's people
Yeah.
who gig different things, who
Yeah.
play. They have those outlets. That's just not what this container is. They have other ways to express original ideas or different things like that. So
Has anybody else reached out to you from the original bands and said,
yeah, we got a few Facebook messages from oh shoot, I'm embarrassed, the lead guitar player from Heart back in the day,
"Oh yeah, I know who he is." Yeah.
uh,
So you
um,
because you did Barracuda, right?
because we did all that, but back when we did it originally, because we've done Barracuda twice, but
Right.
Ed King from Skinnerd actually put a comment on our Facebook page. He got it because he's friends. Well, he's passed now, but he was friends with a guy named JD Simo who came up and played Johnny Cash with us from Nashville. So JD sent him, I think, the Skinnerd videos that we did. And then the bass player from Def Leppard has also commented on one of the Def Leppard videos, but never had anybody reach out directly like Ted Nugent. Oh, except for the drummer from Christopher Cross, the original guy, Tommy
Oh,
Taylor.
that's what I was playing for her this morning.
Yeah, Tommy Taylor actually did reach out to us and
Ride
really
Like the Wind. That's what I
yeah,
played.
he really appreciated Ryan's approach to it. He said he just hadn't heard. He said, I've heard Steve Gadd play this and Keith Carlock play this, and he just appreciated that Ryan honored his original, playing, because Ryan basically played it just like Tommy did, and so he was real appreciative. So yeah, we've just had just a few.
I
So
think thing about it too, for you, when you do a cover, so to
mhm.
speak, you know what you got to sound like. So you, as a band, individual players, and I know how much work goes into this. I don't care how good you are. If you came, well, like Stranglehold, let's take Stranglehold.
Yeah,
You know what Ted plays on it. You know what kind of guitar he plays. He always plays the same guitar. You probably run it out of Marshalls. I don't know, or Fenders. I don't know which one he's running out. So you got to figure out as a guitar, how do I get close to that sound?
hmm
So it takes a lot of work.
It
I mean,
does.
you can read, you can figure out here's the chords, all this stuff, but it takes a lot of work, and I appreciate that
Yeah.
because the other thing about it is, and this is the thing about music right now, is if my granddaughter is 19, I'll ask her what she listens to. And a lot of younger people I listen to or talk to, they always listen to classic rock.
Hmm.
And the music she listens to, she'll put it in a car and she'll go, I'm playing this. She plays my stuff occasionally, but she said, and I go, that sounds just like the band out of the 60s. That thing is, and I've said this before many times on this channel, that these streaming companies don't spend $500 million to buy a catalog because they think it's a great idea. They know that's what people listen to. So
Hmm.
you're right into that where do you find how did you find a place to play and all that logistics? And that's a difficult thing to do. You just don't run out and go, we're going to play in somebody's garage. I mean, you have a,
Yeah.
what do you do it now? I mean, obviously you have a studio or someplace where you go because
Yeah. So
you got the lit.
we rent different, there's a two or three different stages. They're all black, that we just rent. They're auditoriums that we rent.
Oh, wow.
We have a rig that I use. It's gotten more sophisticated over the years, but um, it's a one of those Behringer X32 rigs, that we can get our ears mixes, and then I have a multi-track. I've built a multi-track um, kind of Rode system that's 48 channels in and out, or 48 channels in and then the out. So, I mean, there's been some financial investment over the
Oh,
years.
sure.
Some of that's
Absolutely.
because we were already in cover bands that needed gear.
Yeah.
And some of that's because I've always tried to just casually run a home studio out of my house. So, I mean, it's not that there's not financial investment into it. However, everybody involved is volunteers. So there's no camera ops are getting paid, no musicians get paid. When we do the live show, we try and set ticket prices to meet a budget. We're not trying to make money off of the live show, and so it's not a so any money that we get overage go back into gear or equipment, that sort of thing, or rental of the facility, and
Right.
we're not getting charged a ton of money for those rentals. But so the logistics of it, it kind of when people say, "Hey, I'd like to do that in my hometown," it's not that I don't think people have the ability to do it.
It's a lot of
You know,
work.
I'm not any more special, and nobody in our organization is any more special to go, well, only we could do this.
Right.
I will say though that the stars aligned have just always aligned for this for us with
You guys
facilities.
were meant to do what you did.
Yeah, with facilities and equipment and all that. And kind of like I said when we started this thing, it was we did it once, we're like, oh, let's do it again. And then, oh, I guess we should do a live show. And oh, like it just there's no like there was never a master plan. There was never we even care to be like known. Like it wasn't about that at all. We just wanted to do the music and not
Right.
it. We just didn't want to learn all these songs to this level and then just have it just disappear into the after we play it, it's gone. So that is
Yeah.
where the video side of it came. We had no idea that YouTube would even be. I wasn't even on YouTube. I at the time, this was 2013. I don't even know that I had it on my phone. Like I wasn't a guy that sat down and watched YouTube clips.
Yeah.
I was still had cable at home. I
Yeah.
wasn't cutting the cord at all. And so people say I want to do that. The other side, and we go back to kind of where I started. I've worked at this church for 25 years. For a majority of that, I was the lead music guy here, and
Hmm.
so I knew almost all of the best players in town
Wow.
because they either went to my church or they went to another church, or I gigged with them on the side. And
Yeah.
so, again, anybody could do this, but I was uniquely in a position to make a call to people and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what you would need to do. Do you want to do it? And they just always say yes, always. It sounds
I would
intriguing.
imagine at this point,
It just sounds
people,
intriguing to them.
yeah,
So
and I understand exactly what you're saying because you already had the stable of people you'd already known and
yes,
had
yeah,
relationships with. But at this point, I'm sure if you put a call out, people want to be on your videos now. You
yeah.
probably have people. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
there's
like,
I mean again, like I said earlier, there are some folks probably in our area who don't love what we do because maybe they felt like not included, like
Mm.
so I think there's some people who don't and there's some working musicians on the weekends that probably think we're not legit or authentic, enough because we're not a band. I mean, it's
No,
the
you're
it's a project. I mean,
it's a project, but it never
it's a
ends.
community. It's a
I mean,
community.
it's nothing, and I think it's funny because
Yeah.
you did it for fun. You still
Yeah.
do it for fun.
Oh yeah.
You've elevated to a professionally expert level, and a lot of it, and getting to know you, you had the expertise to do it. I
Yeah.
mean, your dad was a
Oh
producer
yeah.
of your band, and you
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah.
it.
I didn't even know it. I thought he was just an old white dude
And,
that was coming down, and I'd be like, wow, he really thinks we could play that solo section better.
and now
Yeah.
because
I
you've
mean, I
had
grew up.
that and you
Yeah.
do this for a living,
Yeah.
you know what producing is. But I also think
Yeah.
that at that level, that people, you're dealing with people that are already at a level.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I've dealt with my whole life because when you go in and you play, I'm a good player, but I'm not the best in the world, I'm not the worst in the world. But you try to find people that in a band, you know this, you've been in a bunch of them, that are at your level or better. Okay, that's hard to find, or they don't
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah.
They got different ideas.
Yeah. Part of the success of this band, though, is putting people in a position to succeed. Because like say like who did you grow up loving? Who's your top guitar player? Like you
Jimmy,
patterned.
Jimmy
Okay,
was
so
my
Jimi
favorite.
Hendrix.
Yeah,
So if I know that about you, I'm not going to call you to play on the Eagles session.
no,
And I've never even heard you play, and you just
yeah,
confirmed it, right?
yeah, yeah,
So immediately I'm going, well, Rick loves Jimmy, so Rick's probably not going to play on the Eagles thing. That's not going to be my first call. So I'm
yeah,
I'm going to call Jimmy, and I'm going to call
right,
James, and I'm going to call
yeah,
Dale because those are the guys that's their style. Now it does get down a little deeper to where some people love certain music, but that's just not how they play.
yeah,
And so it gets a little bit dicey where they're like, man, I really wish I could have been on the Aerosmith one. Well, but that's just not how you play, right? So
yeah,
there's a little bit of that, but most people they appreciate being put in a position to be successful, and that's where I do tell it's difficult for you. Not only do you have to have like the facilities line up and the gear line up and all that, but then you have to have the stable be wide enough.
yeah.
You know who to call, and then you have to be sharp enough to like pick those, like put people in the right positions on the team, and that's a big stable to do as wide or as
Oh
broad.
yeah.
Now there are some really great and there's days when I think, man, this sounds amazing too, when there's some great cover bands, the classic rock show out of England, it's the same 6 7 guys and they can play anything.
Yeah,
Of course it's Pete Thorne's in that band now, but they can play anything. It's like,
yeah,
wow, that would be great if the same 8 guys could just play anything. We could do a video every 3 days, like instead of, but it would take away from the core of what we are, which is a community, and so you'll notice, I mean, there's a lot of guys that play on a lot of videos. There's some,
sure.
and that's the way we keep the level excellent, and we also keep us from losing our minds having to recreate chemistry and things every session. But on every session, you'll see 2 or 3 people that you haven't seen, and
I actually look for them.
yeah, I
I
mean,
I look for the
but
people that are still there and the ones that are new. I always do that. I mean, I'm
yeah,
looking and
yeah, and
going,
it's not
okay,
that
he
the
wasn't in
people
the last one.
right, and it's not the people that you haven't seen for 2 or 3 years. It's not that they're not here because they'll
It's just
they'll
a
they'll,
song.
they'll still come play at the live show. It's
But
just
that makes a hundred
it's just
percent sense
we're just
to me.
trying to expand as much as we can and bring anytime we can bring somebody new in, and that's almost always word of mouth. It's, hey, I know this person, and it's like, okay, cool, have them send me a video and let's just look at it, and so yeah, it would be very difficult for someone to start on their own.
Oh yeah, you'd have to have
Um,
a lot of people that know, and
Not
you
impossible, but I would always encourage people to go, man, you just need to pick 6 or 7 people and then really narrow down your genre. Because we do grunge and country. We've done Prince. We've done Lionel Richie. Of course, we've done all the classic rock. We've done um, we did No Doubt. We've done
Oh,
like
I like No
like
Doubt too.
like we've expanded, and a lot of those decisions, some of our core fans don't love, and that's fine. We also just want to do songs we like too.
Yeah.
So we've done, Pearl Jam, and we've done, I love the 90s, so we did a Green Day song. People hated it. Okay, cool. We still loved it, so it's not gonna get a ton of views, but
You
we
don't
really
care.
enjoyed it. So again, our stable, because our stable's so big, we can have a broad genre approach. But more of a traditional tribute band like you might see around Dallas or something is probably going to be a band that really dials into 75 to 85 and plays Foreigner through Van Halen, and they do it all pretty well, and it's great and all that. So we're just different that way, and I think people appreciate that too, even if they don't always appreciate the song. One of the things they'll say is, they'll be like, I always hated Green Day, but I loved your guys' version.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
well, interesting. You like us enough that you'll watch it, even though it
Yeah.
says Basket Case Green Day. You'll still click on it, right? That says something about the loyalty that we have. And I always laugh at our show because when we do the show, we do one show a year, and it's usually 30 to 34 songs. It's like 3 hours long. And I always tell everybody, hey, there's going to be two or three tonight that are going to be great time for you to get up and take an intermission. And I said, but don't go away long because we
Yeah.
might be playing Johnny Cash and you might not like that. But
Yeah.
the very next song will be Def Leppard, so don't go too far, because it's one after another, and they always chuckle, and people I think appreciate that, that we can just turn on a dime and pull, you get four new people out on stage and you kick it off, and all of a sudden you're doing Folsom Prison Blues, and you right before it you did you know Jeremy by Pearl Jam. It's very I don't
But you
know
know
if
what makes you that's what makes you unique. And like you say, you might play Johnny Cash and then you're going to do Pearl Jam
yeah
and people are like it's almost like what are they going to do next?
yeah
And
yeah.
then each song stands on its own. Do people come to you and go, "Hey, have we thought about doing this?" I mean, who you said like the Stranglehold song because I know that
Yeah.
song, but I mean somebody has to come and say, "Hey, let's try this."
Yeah, so I'll the sessions. So about we've been around 10 years, and after year four, we kind of changed the vision and we moved it. Well, it's more like year five, but we changed the vision and moved it to putting a core group together for a session and doing three or four songs. But it can be by any artist, but it all works for that lineup of people, right? So that'll generally focus around the lead singer or the lead guitar or the keys, whatever. So like when we did a session with Roger, I called Roger and I said, "Hey man, I want to do a dueling guitar type session with Stefan and you, and I would like us to do Reeling in the Years, and I would like us to do um, oh gosh, well, so we did Ramblin' Man by the Allman Brothers, we did
Yeah.
Reeling in the Years, we did Stranglehold, and we did I wanted to do Flirting with Disaster.
Ah,
So I
yeah.
approached him with Flirting with Disaster and Reeling in the Years. Okay,
Two completely separate. They're like this far apart. Yeah.
they are, but they're both guitar, and I knew the guitar
A
players could
lot of
do it.
guitar parts in both of them.
Right, and those two guys could nail them. So he's like, "Oh, that sounds great. Can we do an Allman Brothers song?" And I was like, "Sure." And so he threw out four or five,
It's Dickie
and I said,
Betts. Yeah.
"I said, well, let's do Ramblin' Man because I think we've got the piano player and I can play organ on that and blah blah." And then he then said, "Hey, for a fourth, would you ever entertain Ted Nugent? I've already learned all these parts." And I said, "If you'll sing it, I'll do. We can do it." And so then I just looked at it and went, "Okay, let's divvy up the guitar parts." And I used him on that because he knew Stefan really well, the other guy that plays a lefty 335 on him. And then I said, "I think you should sing these two, and I should sing these two." And so we just kind of had a debate. Now that didn't include the bass player and the drummer and the keys player at that point. But there's other times where we're doing a session, and I might ask Randy, who plays a lot of bass, "Hey, what do you think the song should be? Because this is your era or your genre." So while I always kind of have to initiate those conversations, it's never in isolation. Um,
Yeah.
so then, like, we did a session just a couple weeks ago that hasn't been released with a really great singer. His name's Kevin Shura. He did Huey Lewis with us, and He did the Phil Collins, the studio, and Lionel Richie with us. He's got more of a rhythm. He's got more of a bluesy, raspy voice. And he was like, hey, I want to do something from the 80s. And so I was like, okay, what about George Benson, Turn Your Love Around? He's like, great. Right. And then he's like, can we do Missing You by John Waite? I'm like, that's a great song. And I said, let's do Bryan Adams. Let's pick a Bryan Adams song.
Oh, yeah.
And, so we just kind of had a discussion between the two of us. I was in bands with him coming out of college. And so we've got a long history. And so it's always a discussion. At the end of the day, I'm always filtering it less. So they're usually filtering it, what do I want to sing or what do I want to play? What's fun for me? I'm filtering it through, do we have a band that can play? Is the song playable by us? Like, I'm thinking of the people we would need, and is it playable by us?
Yeah.
And rarely does anybody ever discuss, this will be a big hit. Like, this will get a lot of views. That just isn't part of
they don't care.
We just don't care. We just really don't care, because if it's done well and it's a popular enough song, some people will like it.
Yeah.
And honestly, we would be fools to try and tell you that we even know what makes something popular. Again, we did Led Zeppelin, and it's amazing. Those videos are incredible, and they got a lukewarm response. Yeah, but they're not no complaints, but they didn't blow up. And then we do Stranglehold, and it's huge, right? And then
part of that is I don't understand it either, because I'll have people on my show that, they're fairly well known and they won't have anybody hardly watch them. And I'm going, everybody's going to watch this video. And then you have somebody that's not really well known, but they have a pretty good fan, and it all of a sudden everybody's watching it.
Yeah,
you don't understand. There's no rhyme or reason.
It changes. I think it changes daily, weekly, how all that works. And there's one little thing and a thumbnail that drives people to click on. It always changes.
I don't know.
None of that's the same. You think you've got it figured out, and then the audience changes. So very rarely do we ever go, okay, we have to do this song because it's going to be a big hit, right? Like we're getting ready to do one this actually next week, and it's going to be all country. So we're going to do George Strait, Garth Brooks, Travis Tritt, and we're going to do a James Taylor song. So, but we're going to do Copperline by James Taylor.
That's a great tune.
It's a great tune, but it's not an international hit.
No, it's not. But I love that song.
But we're going to do it because that's the tune we think we can pull off the best and feature who we are more than like Fire and Rain or.
Oh yeah.
But it's not. We know nobody's gonna click on The Fireman by George Strait, and it's not gonna be get 1 million views in 3 months. It just isn't. But we're gonna have a lot of fun playing it.
But do you think that? No, go ahead. Let's finish.
No, I was just saying. So the popularity of the group was never driven by picking the right songs. Right, we weren't going, hey, we want to be popular, so we'll pick these songs.
No, and I think that's what makes you successful.
Yeah,
because you don't. What do they always say? If you're not looking for, it's when you're not looking for something that shows up. Because you're not trying so hard.
You'll see. There's 3 or 4, I would say, bands that they're actually more popular than us, get more views, and so I wouldn't say we're in competition with them, but we're in the same. We're on the same highway, driving the same way. We're all. They do a really great job of picking huge smash hits and performing them in a way that people really want to watch those, and that's great. And I'll have people say, why don't you have as many views as that band, from overseas, or why don't you have, and it's like, because they have a strategy that just doesn't feel comfortable to me. It's just not who we are. It's not, it's not about all the flash and the trappings. It's about the music, and we're happy if a couple thousand people watch it, much less 1 million. It's fine. So, I mean, we're going to celebrate when we're getting ready to cross 60 million views here, which is pretty good. We're going to celebrate that. I mean, we're not going to sit back and act like it doesn't exist, but we were just as happy at 1 million views as we are going to be at 60 million.
If I read this correct, your nickname is Vandy.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's what my friends call me. So that's who I am to you now.
Vandy, thank you very much.
you really